Alright, so let's go ahead and get started here. I hope everybody can hear me and see everything okay. If not, you can put it in the Q&A, and let me see if I can take care of it. Okay, waiting for the screen to switch over here. Alright, so thank you very much, first of all, for joining me today. Appreciate your time. Today's presentation is going to be all about SharePoint Designer 2010. How can SharePoint Designer help you make the most out of your SharePoint 2010 investment, which some of you I'm sure have made already and some of you are thinking of making. How can SharePoint Designer 2010 be a better tool for you than just doing things through the browser? And what kind of stuff that you can do through the browser that you can also do through SharePoint Designer 2010 better? Okay, and then other stuff that I'll point out off and on here that hopefully is going to really help you realize how SharePoint Designer 2010 is really a necessity for anybody making investments in SharePoint 2010. And no, by the way, I do not work for Microsoft, but I am especially very much passionate about SharePoint and SharePoint Designer. My name is Asif Rahmani. I'm a SharePoint Server MVP and a Microsoft Certified Trainer. I've been training and consulting in SharePoint stuff, specifically for SharePoint stuff, for a long time now. And here, let me tell you a little bit more about myself once this slide gets changed. All right, so here we go. You have my email address down there. If you would like to reach out to me, you're welcome to do so. asif@sharepointelearning.com. I'm the principal contributor at SharePoint-videos.com. And at SharePoint-videos.com, we create videos, short videos from, let's say, from 6-7 minutes all the way to about 10-12 minutes of all the different functionality that we think that users would be, would need to know about in SharePoint, SharePoint Designer, and InfoPath. Okay, so that's SharePoint 2007, SharePoint 2010, and same thing for SharePoint Designer and InfoPath as well. We started way back in 2003 making stuff for SharePoint 2003, and we've been doing it ever since. And now we only have 2007 and 2010 stuff available on the site, and a whole lot more to come. One main thing to keep in mind is these videos are no code. So they don't have any code in there, but at the same time it has really, really powerful functionality without coding. Currently we have 148 videos out there, and more are going up actually today. So every week we add more and more videos on the site. Go ahead and check it out. Hope you like it. I also provide training, SharePoint Designer 2010 training through Critical Path Training. That's criticalpathtraining.com. We provide webcast training and also in-person training, either in-house or also on public venues. If you have any questions about that, feel free to reach out to me. I can tell you about the upcoming trainings and how you can enroll in that. We co-authored, me and my two other colleagues of mine actually co-authored a book on SharePoint Designer 2007. This was back in 2008 that it came out. And now we're working on the SharePoint Designer 2010 book, and hopefully that's going to come out later this year as well. And there's a whole lot of stuff that we talk about in this new book, and really hope that this can help people, help really open their eyes as to the possibilities that SharePoint Designer provides you. And last but definitely not the least, I enjoy meeting people at conferences. So I enjoy presenting at conferences, just doing a knowledge transfer from my head to other people's head. I love seeing people, getting the light bulb on on top of their head, something new that I show them, and they can see exactly how they can apply it to their environment. So if you do ever see me at a conference, please come up, let me know if you attend one of my webinars. That'd be great to meet you over there. All right, just quickly over here, if you are interested, there's a SharePoint Designer 2010 video DVD that we have on our site, and currently it's on sale, $20 off with this code that you see on the screen, SPD 2010 DVD, and that is going to end on May 21st, Friday, May 21st. All right, and I'll put up the slide later as well, but take advantage of it if you like. It's the kind of stuff that you see that I'm going to be demoing here. There's a whole lot more like that on the site and in the video as well. All right, a little bit about the GoToWebinar environment. The GoToWebinar, there's a Q&A panel, and you want to look at the Q&A panel and put in your questions directly over there if you have any, and I'll try to address them as much as I can. I'm hoping this demonstration today is going to be a lot more interactive, and you can ask me questions, and hopefully I'll be able to give you the answers to those questions that you were looking for. Okay. All right. Now, in this presentation, as I mentioned, there's going to be lots of demos and lots of Q&A that I'll be answering. All right. Before I start, let me actually just look at the Q&A to see if there's anything that there's a problem or anything. Hopefully not. All right. Cool. It seems like everything is okay. So let's get started here. SharePoint 2010 is truly a platform, right? It's a platform of so many different things that you can, build on top of. It's not really a software. It's not like Microsoft Word or Excel or things like that. It's a building blocks that you can use to build your solutions on top of. You have three different choices of building your solutions on top of SharePoint. One is through the browser. Well, browser is great. It will let you do a lot of cool things. If you're a contributor, you're a designer, an administrator, or IT professional, you can go directly to the browser, start making your sites, making your lists, your columns, your content types, even your workflows and all. There's a lot of different kind of workflows you can make directly through the built-in workflow functionality. But then there's limitations, and the limitations occur because the browser is a thin client, right? It's a browser. That's what it is, really. So it can only let you do so many things, and after that, you really need to look for a different platform, a different way that you can, enhance your SharePoint look and feel and enhance your, the way that you want to do things in SharePoint. So the next, okay, here we go. The next option that you have in that is, if you're a developer, you can go through Visual Studio, which is great. Visual Studio is an awesome environment, and writing code will definitely get you really, really far. So much stuff you can do with code, but then you got to remember that when you're making code, when you're writing code, you also got to manage that code, or you have to have somebody else manage that code, and they have to understand the environment and the languages that are used. Okay. The third option, of course, the one that I'm passionate about, the one that I hope that you're passionate about as well by the time we're done with this webinar today, is SharePoint Designer 2010. Designers, site administrators, developers, and IT professionals can all use SharePoint Designer 2010 to build their solutions on top of SharePoint. Now, notice one thing, that contributors is not in that list. Okay, so you don't have contributors showing up in that SharePoint Designer 2010 list. It's because contributors to a site, members to a site, are not supposed to go. They're not supposed to go into SharePoint Designer to contribute there. The contribution, meaning uploading documents to a library, making new list items, all that stuff, that still happens in the browser. That is not something that SharePoint Designer is capable of. Okay, so contributors, keep them out. Readers, keep them out. Designers and above should definitely leverage SharePoint Designer 2010. All right, just a few quick words about the evolution of SharePoint Designer. We had front page in the beginning, way back when, and front page 2003, which thankfully is gone completely now, did have some good stuff in there for SharePoint, where you can build your solutions, some of the solutions on top of SharePoint. So Microsoft inserted some stuff in front page to make it SharePoint compatible. Then we had SharePoint Designer 2007. That's used in the market quite a lot today, and that is a great application which lets you really build robust solutions on top of SharePoint using workflows, using data views, and all sorts of stuff. But one of the drawbacks of SharePoint Designer, well, a couple of different drawbacks, 2007, is first, it's not the easiest thing to learn. It's not the easiest thing to ramp up on. And second, when you are making your solutions like workflows, for example, there's no way to package those workflows. Okay, so those kind of things are all fixed, are all much better now in SharePoint Designer 2010. SharePoint Designer 2010, which by the way is not is not supported by SharePoint 2007, and there's a note about that right here in the slide too. You can only use SharePoint Designer 2010 if you have SharePoint 2010. That will let you make your solutions in a very nice, pretty, and easy to use environment, first of all, and then you can package those solutions as well. Packaging sites, packaging workflows, all that stuff is very, very easy to do now. Okay, and I'll be able to show you some of these things in my demo, which is now. Okay, so demo and discussion. Big emphasis on discussion as well. I'll show you some stuff, and then I want you to ask questions in the Q&A panel, and I'll go back and try to answer those questions. In fact, I'm going to do that right now also before I start the demo, and I want to try to to show you how can SharePoint Designer help you. That's the main thing. How can you make best use of SharePoint Designer 2010? All right. Let's look at the questions panel here. What do we have? Okay, first question here is this being recorded? Will it be available later in the library video library for members? You know, this webinar is being recorded right now. Okay, so now hopefully the recording turns out fine, everything is good. If it is, then I'm going to make it available on the site for actually everybody to view. All right, can we, let's see. Can you give me the SharePoint 2010 DVD purchase info again? The SharePoint 2010 DVD, the code for that is SPD 2010 DVD, SPD 2010 DVD, and I'll put up that slide once again at the end. All right, asking, can you do stuff about data view and also about SharePoint Designer workflows? Absolutely, I'll be showing both of those things. Okay, so let me get started here. Okay, just going to wait for a second for your screen to refresh. Now, what you're looking at, hopefully soon, once your screen refreshes, there is the SharePoint site, SharePoint 2010 site. What I'm going to do is go directly to SharePoint Designer and start from there. So Start, All Programs. SharePoint Designer is under the SharePoint folder. It is not under the Microsoft Office group anymore like it used to be. So you would have to go to SharePoint folder or SharePoint group, and within that you'll see SharePoint Designer 2010. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that, open it up. Okay. First thing that you need to do when you open up SharePoint Designer, you click on the Open Site button. The Open Site button will give you the Open Site dialog, in which I'm going to go ahead and put in my address, intranet.wingtip.com. Alright, so that's my site name, intranet.wingtip.com. I'll click on Open. What I'm doing right now is opening up my top site, the top site of my site collection. Here's one big thing to keep in mind. SharePoint Designer 2010 does not or cannot make site collections. Alright, so SharePoint Designer 2010 can only work with site collections. It cannot make site collections. To make site collections, you need to go either do it programmatically, do it through STS ADM utility or PowerShell, or through central administration, but not through SharePoint Designer. SharePoint Designer requires a site collection to already exist. Once you're there, for example, here at the top side of the site collection, from here I can look at my sub-sites underneath it. I have an IT site and an R&D site, for example, on my bottom right here. I'm going to make a new site on your behalf for you guys. So click on New. It gives me all the different templates which are available for making a new site. Now, these site templates are all out of the box, plus any customized site templates that you have made. I'm going to use the team site template, and I'll call this new site Webinar. Okay, so I've made the URL intranet.wingtip.com/webinar. Click on OK. SharePoint Designer can only hold one site at a time, meaning because I made a new site right now, it would open up a new instance of SharePoint Designer, and within that new instance I'm seeing the webinar site. So I'm going to go back in my other instance of SharePoint Designer, the older one, and close that so there's no confusion. Okay, what you're seeing here is a webinar site in SharePoint Designer. the title for that site still says team site. That's always going to be the case. It takes the template of your site template basically, and it uses that as the name of your site. So you can go ahead and click on it and change it pretty easily. Here we go. I changed it to webinar, and then always remember to click on the save icon that's at the top left. All right, so now it's been saved. Great. What you're looking at right now, I'm sure some of you are already familiar with that, but let me give everybody else a quick rundown here. On the left, you got the navigation pane. Okay, that shows all of the different components of your site. On the top, you have the ribbon, which of course appears everywhere these days. And in the middle, we have, in the blue over here, the summary page. The summary page will show you the summary, the properties, just any customizations that you can make for any object that is currently in context. So if you are, for example, looking at a page, it will show you the properties of the page. Same thing for a site, same thing for a workflow, etc. All right. What I'm going to do first is show you the permissions stuff here, just briefly. On the top right, you see permissions, right? In here, you can stop inheriting the permissions. Okay, you can change the permission levels. You can even get to the site collection administrators from here. Now, this, by the way, is going to just take you to the browser, and in the browser, you can change things for site collection administration. So some of these things that you're looking at are links to go to the browser, but most of these things are done in SharePoint Designer. All right. I'm going to also click on site groups here at the left. The site groups is where I can go to see all my SharePoint groups basically in my site collection. If I click on AdventureWorks members, it shows me that domain users are all members right now for my site, and I can click on the Add Users button to add more users if I wanted to. Okay, same thing. The kind of things that you see in the browser are the same things that you're seeing over here. Now, the question, of course, being that, okay, well, it's in the browser, then why do I do it over here? Well, ask yourself this question. Those of you who have used web applications, like Office web applications, for example, a Word web app, or if you've used even Google web applications, right? Those things have limited functionality, right? If you're doing the same exact kind of stuff in Microsoft Word, or WordPerfect or other environment like that, if you do it in a client application, in a fat client application, it's much faster, isn't it? Editing a document is much faster when you do it directly on your computer as opposed to doing it online. Although of course online you can share it easily, but it's much faster doing it from your fat client application. Same thing here. The kind of things that you can do here is just going to commit much faster. When I go to the browser, which I will go to right now, every click that I make is a server post. It's going back from my client machine to the server machine, and it's bringing all the data back. Now, my machine over here is a self-contained machine, so it's very fast, but yours might not be the same case in your company, right? So if you had to change permissions, for example, for your site, you go to Site Actions, Site Permissions, and here we go. Then you end up at the Site Permissions page, and over here you have the similar kind of things that you can do. I personally believe that things are much more intuitive in SharePoint Designer now in this release than they are in the browser, especially for the site permissions kind of stuff. So over here, make these permissions, of course, you can do that easily, but it's much easier and much faster is what I'm trying to say in SharePoint Designer. Okay, that's enough about permissions. Let's move on. Other things that you see over here, for example, site pages. Site pages is a library that contains all of your site's pages. Making a new site page is extremely simple here. You click on the web part page up at the top. It gives you all different layouts. You have 8 layouts here that are showing, and 8 different web part zone layouts basically that you can have on your page. You pick the one that you want. You can go ahead and give it the name. Let's say we'll just call it test.aspx. And now I'm going to click on the test.aspx page. Here, it didn't take me directly to the page to edit it. It actually took me to a place where I can see the information about the page. Okay, so who has permissions right now on the page? Because it's inheriting permissions from the site pages library. Currently, everybody has permissions. But I can stop the inheritance right here if I wanted to. It shows me also that the page is currently checked in. Okay, the version of the page, who created and modified the page, all those things, all the properties, the versions of that, everything is just right here. Much, much faster to deal with these things instead of going to the browser. Now you want to edit this file, no problem. Click on Edit File. Once you click on Edit File, it loads up the master page, which is, of course, the Chrome, the branding of your site, the logos, everything on the page. It appears right there. And then it shows you the web part zones. We have 3, 4, 5 different web part zones available here, and you can start making connections to things and deploying your data right here. Now I'm going to do something advanced over here right away. What I'm going to do is I'll make a connection to a database table. Okay, I'll make a connection to a database table, and I'm going to go ahead and put that data from the database table directly onto this page. And you'll see how easy it is to do that. First, I want to show you the data. Don't need that. Okay, the database is AdventureWorks database. In the AdventureWorks database, which is a fictional it's a fictional corporation, AdventureWorks, and the database is provided by Microsoft for free. I'm going to the contact table, and I'm going to say, give me the top 1,000 rows from that table. Here it is, right? You have contact ID, name style, title, first name, middle name, all this stuff from the contact table. And I want to bring in that information in my site and show it on that page that I just made. No problem. Here's what you do. In SharePoint Designer, the first thing, you're thinking about, okay, I need to make a connection to a data. So, well, I'm going to go to data sources. Here it is. Data sources is a selection in the navigation pane. Great. Now I need to make a connection to a database. So you click on the database connection button up top. Easy, right? All right. And now it asks you, well, what do you want to do? Do you want to configure a database connection? Well, obviously, that's what I want to do. Click on Configure. All right. Then the server name. Now, of course, you need to have permissions to the server somehow before you can access it and work with it. So keeping that in mind, you put in the fully qualified domain name of your server. In my case, it's just a wingtip server. Then you go down below in authentication over here. You can provide, if you would like, directly the database credentials. In my case, it's going to be SA and password. Definitely don't use SA and password. This is system administrator, which has all the power in the world. You don't want to use that in production. Here's what you would want to use, though, in production. You have two choices. One is you make a new SQL account, and the SQL account, give it some restrictive privileges, and that SQL account you can provide directly here and use connect it to your database using that. Or even better, use single sign-on authentication. Now it says single sign-on here, but the new name for that is Secure Store. Okay, Secure Store is a new name for single sign-on in SharePoint 2010. You set up a Secure Store service basically to your backend database, and that application ID that it gives you for that you can use directly here. And what that's going to do is it's going to pass on your credentials, and it's going to use your credentials, whoever signed in, to make a connection to the database, which is the best way of doing things. There is a video out there on the site on SharePointVideos.com where you'll see how you can set up single sign-on authentication and how you can connect to a database using that as well. But for right now, I'm just going to use SA and password. Next. It's telling me that it's going to send information through a clear text, which is okay right now, but in production, if you are going to use SQL authentication, what I would recommend is use SSL. So use HTTPS basically to get to your database. All right, it went ahead and now it's showing me the list of all the different databases that are out there. I care about the AdventureWorks database, so I'm going to select that one, and I'll click on Contact, the contact table. Then I'm going to click on Finish. All right, so my data connection is almost made now. It's asking me, do you want to filter any properties? Do you want to say, you know what, don't bring back, for example, the title and the name style and things like that. You can filter those kind of things, or you can eliminate fields directly if you wanted to, and that's directly in the connection information right here. I'm going to leave it for right now. Click on OK. Here's my connection. Oops, what was that? Okay, here's my connection, contact on AdventureWorks. This connection now the connection information for this is directly available at the site level, at this site level, meaning that any page on the site can utilize this information. For me, I need to go to my test page, which is available as a tab up above. In the tab, I'm going to click on one of the zones. I'll just click on the top zone here. And I need to insert that data coming from the contact table. So insertion in this case would be going to the Insert tab in the ribbon. It's all context sensitive. The ribbon is context sensitive, so it shows me all the stuff that I can do currently in this zone. You want to click on Data View, and all of your data sources that are available on the site are all available right here. So it shows me the database connection, contact on AdventureWorks. That's what I want to do. I want to click on that, and there we go. Okay, so just like that, it took the first 5 columns from that data, from that table, and it displayed it right here. And if I wanted to show additional columns, by the way, very simple. You can click on Add Remove Columns at the top, and that will let you remove or add columns. So for example, the name style, I don't need that at all. Let me take that out. In fact, I don't need the middle name either. Let me take that out, and the title. Okay, so contact ID, first name, and let's see, how about email address? I'm making these 3 fields available currently for my data. Okay, I'll click on OK. Here we go. So my goal here, once again, just to recap, is to show the data from the database directly to my users. And I want to clean up this data a little bit. Right now, it says first name, joined together. So I went ahead and put a space in between. Same thing for email address. Same thing for contact ID. Just go ahead and directly in there and put your spaces in. Easy enough. Now I wondered to myself that, what, of course, I'm not a database guy. I'm not a DBA, so I'm not going to change information in my database. Fine. But the actual display of the information, how can I change that? How can I show, for example, the first name and the last name of the person? So Gustavo, what is the last name? Achong. Okay, I can see the Achong name in my data source details pane on the right. How can I show both of those things together in my column? No problem. The presentation of your data can be configured very easily. Here's what you do. This is some good advanced functionality that you can configure here. You click on the node that you want to change, okay, and you go up to the ribbon, click on the FX button, FX formula. Here's your what's called an XPath expression builder. Currently, it's showing me that the first name node, the first name information from the data source that I'm connected to is being shown. Great. And at the bottom, it shows me a preview of what it's going to look like. Perfect. What I want to do is I want to concatenate. So concatenate means, of course, join together the first name and maybe a space in between and then last name. Here's how easy it is to do that. Take my first name, double click on concat function, which is one of the functions most recently used. So that's my first parameter. I'll put in comma, space, double quotes, space, double quotes, and double quotes, space, double quotes in this case is just it's just a space. That's all it's going to put in there after first name. Once again, comma, and then after putting in the comma, it shows me all different fields which are available. Okay, which are available for me to choose from. I'll choose last name. Okay, here we go, and then I'm going to click on OK. Just like that, I was able to change the presentation of my data without changing the actual data itself. The database has not been affected, but the presentation of it has been affected now. I'll click on Save to save this information. And I'm going to get out to my site, go to the webinar site that I have just made for you guys. In the webinar site, my page was made, of course, at the Site Pages library, so I'll click on that. And then I'll click on Test. The test page. Okay, here we go. Here's how simple it is. The test page now shows the, well, it still says the first name, but it's actually showing the first name and last name for that. And it's all dynamic data. So anything changes in the back end, it changes here as well. And for some of you who understand the new Ajax functionality, just Ajax way of doing things, this is using Ajax. The way it's updating is all asynchronous updates. It's just updating the actual web part. It's not updating the whole page, so which makes it extremely, extremely fast when it goes through the data. All right. Let me take any questions that are there, and then I'll go ahead and then we'll go the workflow route. Talk about workflows a little bit here. Let's see what we got here. Okay, question, Bruce. You're asking how much SharePoint Designer cost. Good question, Bruce. SharePoint Designer is completely free. SharePoint Designer 2010 is completely free, and only thing it requires is SharePoint 2010, the SharePoint Foundation, which is also free. Now, of course, free in this case means you need Windows SharePoint. I'm sorry, you need Windows Server 2008. As long as you have that, you can install SharePoint Foundation on top of that, which is free. And then after that, you can work with SharePoint Designer to change whatever you want, like I've been showing you in your SharePoint environment. Is SharePoint Designer 2007 compatible with 2010? No, sorry, Kathy, but SharePoint Designer 2007 is not compatible with SharePoint 2010, and vice versa is also true. So they're not compatible at all. You need the same version of SharePoint and SharePoint Designer. Okay. Another question here is that where is SharePoint Designer 2010 available from? You know, I just had this conversation with a few folks at Microsoft that, hey, I'm not seeing the actual link to SharePoint Designer 2010 download in the SharePoint Designer page. And they're working on that stuff, but currently if you go to Microsoft.com, and search for SharePoint Designer 2010, you'll find it for sure. Or you can go to my blog. My blog is, you can access my blog directly from the SharePointVideos.com site. And in there, I believe the second entry, you'll see the link, direct link to the SharePoint Designer 2010 download. Okay. Let's see. Now, someone's asking about the looping functionality in workflows. Now, I've not talked about workflows yet, but when I do talk about workflows, please keep in mind that looping functionality is not available out of the box in workflows. That is one of the limitations. You need to, if you do need to do looping in workflows, then you need to go to the Visual Studio route, or you can make activities or actions and deploy them directly to SharePoint Designer to do your looping, but it's not available out of the box. Okay, let's see. Let's move forward. Okay, so next thing that I want to show you is SharePoint workflow stuff. You know, in SharePoint itself, so if you are looking at the site itself, you can make workflows directly here. And the way you do that is you go to, let's say, a list or library, for example, shared documents. And you want to make a workflow here, so you go library. Then you can click on the workflow settings over here, and then click on add a workflow. Okay, and it's going to show you exactly what kind of workflows you can create. All right, so as soon as your page refreshes, you'll see that there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 options that I have here that is showing me: disposition approval, 3-state, collect feedback, approval, and collect signatures. All these workflows were available in SharePoint 2007 as well, and now they're available in SharePoint 2010. And these workflow templates are great templates. They really are. You can just choose one of them that you want. For example, approval. Let me go ahead and put in approval as a name for my workflow. Click on next. And when the next screen comes up, it shows you how you can configure your workflow, which is like that here. So great. You know, you can configure your workflow. You can decide who the approvers are going to be for your workflow, and how much time do you want to give each person to approve or not approve the actual item, all that stuff. That's great stuff, but there's really not many different routes you can put this workflow through, or there's not custom functionality that you can have this workflow do. For example, you know, what about when I go ahead and move a document from a library to another library, go ahead and check in that document automatically. So checking in a document is an action that is not available here out of the box. Okay, you can do it through SharePoint Designer, but it's not here. Another thing, for example, is I want to log some information to the history list and some customer information to show users something that's gone on in the workflow. Well, that's also not available here. How about creating a list item? Something that happens in a shared documents library, with, for example, a new document gets created. I want to create a list item in announcements list and announce to the whole team that, hey, a new announcement has, a new document has been put into the document library. That kind of stuff, all those things are not available in these out-of-the-box workflows because they're already templatized and you can only do certain things in here. Here's a really, really good thing that you can do with these workflows. You can copy the actual information, not information, but the actual way of the way this workflow works, and then extend this workflow further. Okay, so that's completely new functionality in SharePoint 2010. Here's what I mean by that. When you go to SharePoint Designer, you click on Workflows. In Workflows, it gives you the 3 out of 5 templates directly right here, and it says that these are globally reusable workflows that you can choose to use right away, or you can extend further. Okay, so and actually, you know what? I can do that at the top site. Let me open up sites, open site. I'm just navigating. It will come up in your screen pretty soon. I'm going to the top site, which is intranet.wingtip.com, and I'm going to workflows over there. So I can show you that those workflows that you just saw, I can modify them directly if I wanted to. And all those workflows are available because they've been coded in through declarative workflow platform in SharePoint. Okay, so I'm sure your screen is showing what's showing in mine right now. If I click on Approval Workflow, and then I click on the Edit Workflow under Customization, okay, it shows me that the action, which, by the way, I know looks deceiving kind of, but this action, the start approval process, is it's a whole task process designer by itself. When I click on the approval link over here, here we go. Now it shows me how the tasks will behave in this approval workflow. If I want to change the behavior of a single task, I can click on that link under customization, and now it's going to show me lots of cool stuff that I can do. So when a workflow gets deployed, and a task is assigned to a person, to, let's say, hey, here's a task to go ahead and book a conference room. When the task gets assigned, something happens. What happens? Well, currently, in this case, what it's showing you is nothing is happening. You can make something happen by clicking on where it says Start Typing or Use Insert Group or Ribbon and put an action over here. The action here could be, well, how about I create a list item? Okay, so here we go, create list item. Now here, what this is saying is that in my case, when a new task is generated in using this workflow, an item in a particular list, which I have yet to define, will get created. I can click on the This List link and then tell it exactly, okay, here we go, which list do I want to put information in. In this case, I only have 2 options, task list or current list. And then in the current list, whichever the current list is that I'll be making the workflow, I'll be deploying the workflow to, I can put a new title. A new item in that list with a certain title. Okay, so I could do that here. When the task is pending, what happens? Well, when the task is pending, emails get sent out, log gets populated, the workflow history log. All that good stuff is happening when the task is pending. If I want to change some of the stuff around, if I want to delete some of these things, no problem. I can click on the item that I don't want to happen and click on Delete up top. Okay, I don't want to do that. I don't want to mess up with my site here right now, but you can do that. Or if you want that to happen first, you can click on the Move Up, okay, or Move Down. Easy enough. All these different actions or activities are available at the site level, and you can make new activities or new actions yourself in Visual Studio if you like, and then bring it over to SharePoint. Or there are many vendors out there who sell activities that you can buy and put in here. Okay, so lots of cool stuff is available directly here. Going back to workflows, so that's just the built-in workflows here that you can customize, or you can make new ones by copying any of these workflows, which is a better way of doing it, by clicking on the copy and modify up above. But you can also make workflows from scratch, which is what I like to do personally, because that's then it gives you the complete freedom of what you want to do. You have site workflows you can make, which are attached to a site, and you can work on any list or library and any person within the site directly. You can make list workflows on any list. This functionality exists in the last version of SharePoint as well. You can go ahead and directly attach your workflow to a list, or you can make reusable workflows. Reusable workflows, which we've been asking for a long time, are finally here. And when you click on reusable workflow, it gives you the option, hey, what do you want to do in your workflow? Okay, so in my case, let's say if I say oops, went quickly over here. Let me delete this. Okay, I'm going to make a new reusable workflow one more time, and this is going to be look out for calendar items, something like that. All right, and then you can scope the reusable workflow to a certain content type as well. Scoping a workflow to a content type means that when you, for example, pick document here, then you can apply this workflow, this reusable workflow, to any document type of content type or anything below it, meaning any child content types of document. Okay. Currently, I'm just going to say that let's go ahead and apply this workflow or have it be available to all content types. Click on OK. In my workflow designer environment, I always recommend to people that you want to rename your steps, because step 1 doesn't really say much, and once you have 15, 20 steps, it's going to be difficult for you to understand exactly what happens in each step, so you should rename these things. Within your workflow, you can go ahead and click on, for example, action. In my action, I'm going to say log to history list. Okay, and I'll click on this message link and say log starting. So the workflow is starting. Within the step, I'll go to the bottom here and click on condition. And in this case, I'll click on if current item equals value. Okay. Then I'll click on field and select the title field. Now the reason it only shows up the title field and no other field here is because I have said that I want this workflow to be applicable to all content types, and all content types have only one editable column that's in common, which is the title column. So that's what reason it provides me that. If in the previous step when I first made my reusable workflow, if I had said, for example, document content type, then other document properties, the document metadata, would also be available to me as fields here. So if current item title, and I'm going to say contains ignoring case, value could be picnic, okay, do something. And I'll make it a simple workflow here, so my something is going to be log again to history list. Log something, well, picnic word was found. All right, below that, I'm going to say send an email. Action, send an email. When you click on these users link, gives you the opportunity to compose your message. I'll click on the address book icon here and click on people groups from SharePoint site. So I need for it to do a lookup for somebody from my site. Click on add, and I can search for a person. So how about, there you go, there's a person called Brian that I searched for right now. I'm going to go ahead and add Brian. Okay, I added Brian in the to list. Then you have carbon copy. For subject, you can put in static values directly, or you can put dynamic values. You can click on this ellipsis icon, or ellipsis button, the 3 dots, to bring up a string builder. And here you can say that, for example, the following is the title, something like that, dash, and then you can look up the title of the item by clicking on the add or change lookup and title. Here we go. So the data source, current item, field from source is title. Okay. So I have some static values and some dynamic values for the actual item, and that's going to become my subject. And for the body, whatever the body is, something something, that stuff is going to be completely customizable. You can change the text, make it bold, make it bigger, whatever you want to do. Very nice, rich text formatting that you have available. And when this email gets sent out, it's going to be completely HTML, okay, which is great to have. Click on OK, and here's my email action. You want to make a else if block, so condition, if this is true, do something. If it's not true, look for some other condition. You can click on the else if branch right here. And within here, you can click on condition. Let's do once again, if current item equals value. This time, go a little bit faster here. I am looking for the word, outing, something like that, and then do something else in here. I'll do a quick one, log to history list the word outing. Okay, so my workflow, let's say, is created, and of course there's a separate session that I do on workflows which talks about just workflows, but here I just want to mention workflows, or just do a little bit of workflows. So a simple workflow is created. I want to go ahead and check for errors, which is on the top left. No errors are found. Great. You can save the workflow in draft state and then later publish it, or you can publish it directly right now, which is what I'll do. And it pushes out there, makes it available for everybody. Well, it makes it available on the site, first of all. That's what it's going to do. It's going, okay, it's gone. So now it's available to the site. What does that mean? When I go to the workflow settings page by clicking on the workflow settings button at the top, here I can say that go ahead and associate this workflow directly to a list or associate it to a content type. I'll click on associate to list, and for example, I'll click on announcements. Okay. All right, so what's it done is it actually brought up the browser window, because the association can only happen in the browser. That doesn't happen in the SharePoint Designer environment. But now it's showing me that it's going to take this look out for calendar items workflow template, which I just created using SharePoint Designer. And I can go ahead and make my workflow, give it whatever unique name that I want right down here. Look out for calendar items, I guess is fine right now. Click on OK at the bottom. And now my workflow has been created, has been attached to the announcements list. If I wanted to associate that or attach it to a different list, no problem. Just back in SharePoint Designer, you can do this as much as you want. Associate to list, calendar, form templates, links, whatever list you want to attach it to. And the beauty of doing it this way, of having a reusable workflow, is when you want to later make a change to the workflow itself, you can go ahead and make it in one place, which is by coming to this workflow screen, clicking on Edit Workflow, making the change to your workflow, and publishing it out. Once it's changed and published, any list or library or content type that is using this workflow is going to get the change right away. So let's just quickly look at how our workflow behaves in here. Here we go. Okay, I'm at the workflow settings page and announcements list. I can click on announcements, and to execute a workflow on an announcement on a list item, you can click on the list item, click on workflows and the ribbon, and click on the workflow that you want to execute. You can also make it so the workflows execute automatically every time a new item is created, but right now I'm doing it manually. Okay, and I'm going to click on Start to start this workflow. And there we go. It has done something. Of course, it didn't find the words that I was looking for. So in the workflow status page, it just says starting, and then after that, nothing, because it didn't do anything after that. But that's how a workflow could be associated to a list. And once again, if you want to associate to a content type, what you would do is go to workflow settings, associate to content type, and then pick the content type that you want to associate it to. Okay, simple enough. Here's another thing that you can do with this workflow, and that is to save this workflow as a template. I'm going to click on Save as Template up top. If I click on the Save as Template button right now, it's going to take this workflow and it's going to make it a .wsp file, which is a SharePoint solution file. Here we go. It made it. The template has been saved to the Site Assets library. I'll click on OK, go to Site Assets, and refresh the screen. Here we go. Look out for calendar items.wsp now is a packaged workflow. And what I can do with this package is I can take this directly to Visual Studio if I want. And in Visual Studio I can open this workflow package and extend from there if I like. Or I can take the WSP file from this library, maybe email it to somebody or put it on a file share somewhere or maybe a document library. And somebody else can take this WSP file, put it into their own site collection, a different site collection, whatever, altogether, and then activate it there, which is, I think, very, very cool. You know, you can just take your WSP item, push it to somebody other site collection, and make it available right away by activating it to that site collection. And I do and I talk about all these different things in the actual workflow session that I have, which is separate from this session. In this session, what I wanted to do was, give you a good flavor of all this stuff that you can do in SharePoint Designer. And I tried my best for what I could do in an hour. And I think we're almost out of time here, but let me see if I can talk about any more things here. Let's see. Well, first, actually, let me go ahead and put up this screen for this offer that I talked about. If you do want to see all the different kind of things you can do in SharePoint Designer, you're welcome to purchase this DVD. SPD 2010 DVD is the code that you can use to purchase the DVD. You'll find the DVD at the SharePoint-videos.com site in the Products tab. Make sure you click on the Apply button after putting in the code, otherwise the discount will not get applied. Okay, and the offer expires on May 21st. What I'm going to do right now is actually look at the questions that you guys have. You know, I do want to make it a very interactive session. I've not gotten a chance to take too many questions yet. Let me go ahead and take more. One question is, can you make your own custom pages in SharePoint? And absolutely, I think I showed how you can make a new web part page in SharePoint Designer. You know, I'm so glad you asked that question, Henry. There is a functionality that's missing in SharePoint Designer, and I personally am kind of upset about that being missing, and I want to tell you about it. You can make a web part page in SharePoint Designer, just the way I showed you how you can make it. Something that you cannot do, though, is you cannot make a wiki page using SharePoint Designer. You can modify a wiki page, but you cannot make a wiki page. And a wiki page, if you're wondering, is just a regular page that the team site supports now, right? Any team site supports. You have to go to SharePoint, click on the Site Actions, Create Page, and then once you have that wiki page, which is the default page, when that's created, then come in SharePoint Designer, and then you can modify that page. So that's functionality unfortunately is missing. Okay, one question, Ayub, you were asking about, are you going to cover BCS and ribbon creation modifications? You know, the BCS functionality, Business Connectivity Services, is an awesome functionality, making external content types and so forth. I don't have the time anymore to cover that. That's a very extensive functionality. I will have a webinar in the future about that. In the DVD, there's BCS stuff as well. So the DVD covers BCS, external content types, workflows, all types of workflows, creating custom pages, and lots of other stuff. So go ahead and check that out if you're interested, or you can subscribe on the site as well. The information is there also. Okay. Let's see, what is that here? Can you add Oracle data sources? Okay, good question, David. Can you touch, can you go to Oracle? You can actually. Oracle, you can use, just the OLADB functionality to get to Oracle as well. Another thing that you can do is you can use the BCS functionality that I just touched upon, and the BCS functionality will let you make Oracle make a connection to Oracle and have that available as an application definition. And once you have that available, then you can go make an external content type to the Oracle database information. So definitely there's a couple of different ways of doing that. Can you access SharePoint across the internet? Okay, Winome, that's a good question. Can you go to your SharePoint sites on the internet? This very much depends on how you have it deployed. there's different licensing models that Microsoft has for SharePoint. There's a SharePoint Standard and a SharePoint Enterprise license, SharePoint Server Standard and SharePoint Server Enterprise, both of which you can buy the Internet connectivity license for. They cost quite a bit of amount of money, but if you do want to make your internet site into a SharePoint, using SharePoint, you can definitely do that. So you would have to buy licensing for that before you can do it. Okay. Let's see. Can you deploy data view web parts from SharePoint environment to production environment? That's a very good question. Now, data view web parts, which of course were not covered here because there's just so much stuff to talk about. I do have a separate session for that. Data view web parts you can modify directly in SharePoint Designer, just like you could do in 2007, you could do it in 2010. The actual deployment of those web parts is still exporting here and then importing it in the other site. So that's still the deployment functionality that you will have to follow. Export the web part as a .web part file and then import it on a different site or a different site collection altogether. That works great. Or you can take the whole site and package the whole site. You can do that through SharePoint Designer by saving the whole site as a template, and then you can deploy it directly to your production environment. So that's the two options that you currently have for deploying these things. They're not as simple to deploy, unfortunately, as workflows are. Workflows are much more simpler now, but you can still do it just like you did before in 2007. Take a few more questions here. Okay, is there an advantage to placing your data in a table versus in a list and calling it from there? That's a good question, Sandra. Why would you want to put your data in a list, SharePoint list, as opposed to a table in SQL? The answer to that, personally, the way I feel is, SQL is always going to remain the most powerful repository for your data and the most kind of things that, the most scalable way of doing things. And sometimes you don't even have a choice as to your data existing in SQL or SharePoint. It's always going to exist in SQL. So that is personally, I believe, that's enterprise way of sharing your data, enterprise way of storing your data is still going to be SQL. That will remain that way. But users creating their own data. So, for example, you're creating a list of customers that apply to your department. Well, that list doesn't have to be a table. You might have a central list of customers for your company in the table, in a SQL table, but your department customers can be in a SharePoint list in your department site, and then you can manipulate that as you want. So that's what I would think about as to exactly what you want to do with that data and who is going to have access to that data, and then manipulate it that way, having it in SQL or having it in a SharePoint list. And both of that sources of information can be gotten to, of course, using SharePoint Designer. Okay. One more question here. Let's see when you get it. Microsoft's hosted SharePoint online service. Okay. Can you use the Microsoft SharePoint Designer, Greg is asking, with the SharePoint online service? Yes, Greg, that's a very good question, and the answer is absolutely. There's a bunch of different sites out there which are providing hosting for SharePoint, including Microsoft. So there's Microsoft Online Services, there's fpweb.net, there's SharePointHosting.com, there's SharePointSite.com. All those places, when you get their site, and I have a couple of those myself actually, when you have those sites, they will give you a site collection to work with, and then you can modify that site collection information directly using SharePoint Designer. So then, in your case, there is no footprint really at your server level. They have the server, they have your site collection, and you are using SharePoint Designer to connect to it and modify things, which is a great functionality to have. All right, we are done actually for today, so I'm going to wrap it up here. You have the code. If you want to reach out to me, you can reach out to me at my email or my Twitter ID. Thank you very much for joining me today. And hopefully we're going to have another webinar pretty soon. There's actually one coming up on June 3rd where we're going to talk about InfoPath stuff. And if you have other ideas that you want me to do webinars on, you can shoot it my way as well, and I'll consider those things. All right? So thank you very much, folks. Hope to see you next time. Take care.